What's up, y'all? Talon here. Today we're going to be covering some of the biggest grassroots tournaments in the Regulation G format. Regulation G is returning at the start of January for the San Antonio Regionals at the start, as well as locals and other tournaments. So a couple of grassroots tournaments online occurred with a lot of participants. I think the Victory Road December Challenge had about, I want to say around like 150 to 200 people. It was an overall about 1,500 prize pool tournament, and then there was a spear pillar tournament with I think a lower entry fee, so there was more people. I think overall had 353, sorry for the quick scrolling, but yeah, two very large tournaments. I've recreated some of the top teams from these tours. If you appreciate that as a resource, definitely subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, it helps out a ton. But we'll be going into some of the details of those teams now. So starting off with the USPA Spear Pillar Winter Tour, and if you didn't know, USPA is the United States Pokemon Association. It's basically like a tour where every state in the United States takes their strongest players by, determined by some manager, and then they field them versus each other, and then everyone plays during some level of pools, ultimately before they go into a final bracket where each state starts eliminating one another until there is one final state. Definitely appreciate them putting on this tour, USPA and Spear Pillar. But yeah, the first team is something that should look kind of familiar. It's a pretty standard Calyrex Shadow Rider team. There's a lot of very similar teams to this, but this one is a Life Orb Terra Dark set. So the Terra Dark is really useful in the mirror if you're playing against a Psychic type Calyrex, or rather your secondary attacking move is Psychic instead of Draining Kiss, which seemed to be more popular towards the end of the season. The Terra Dark resists Astral Barrage as well as is immune to Psychic, so that's really solid in the mirror. We also saw some Terra Normal in the Victory Road tournament be the dominant Terra type, but I do want to highlight this Incineroar set, Rocky Helmet, Terra Water. If you go for Terra Water, you're obviously tanking hits against Urshifu very well, but if you run Rocky Helmet max defense, you have like a 14% chance to live an Adamant, Choice Scarf Urshifu's Surging Strike, as well as dealing like 50% damage to them with your Rocky Helmet hits, and they basically have to go for Terra Water or have some additional modifier to be able to knock you out in one. And even then, you're still taking 50% of their health, so that's a cool trade there. Raging Bolt is just a standard set on this team. You can run some bulk to maybe take some hits a little better from certain Pokemon like the opposing Calyrexes. I don't really remember at this point in the format, so I think maximizing bulk and power is a fine option, but if you notice yourself taking some hits like just a little poorly, for example, like a Calyrex Ice or a Calyrex Shadow Calyrex Ice after you've gone for the Terra, maybe it's doing a little bit over 50% and you want it to do a little bit under, so it's a 3-hit KO. You're definitely free to take some out of special attack and maximize that defense to take those hits a little bit better. Running Amoonguss here on this team, Mental Herb is a cool option. I think Taunt and Incineroar was way more common in this format, so having the option to get away from that with the Spore, I think Taunt Tornado is also pretty common, so having the option to ignore that and be able to Spore opposing teams is definitely very much appreciated. If you don't remember, Bold Max Defense is an important spread just because it allows you to tank a Calyrex Ice Rider Glacial Lance a majority of the time, I believe. 48 speed is important because Calyrex Ice Rider min speed hits 49 speed. So if you're playing against a Trick Room Calyrex, you can be certain that your Amoonguss is slower and you don't have to worry about whether they're neutral nature or a min speed. If you're running 50, then it's kind of a hard question there. There's really no drawback outside of being the slower attacker between Amoongusses, which can be kind of important on Pollen Puff Wars. Generally, you're either going to be running 48 speed Amoonguss to underspeed min speed Calyrex in Trick Room, or you want to go for the 35 speed Amoonguss to underspeed Clefairy. You could go, min speed if you want to, just to not play around, or if you're having trouble getting an exact speed Amoonguss in game. But yeah, this is just a quick refresher on the Amoonguss stats. Urshifu, very standard, except for Stellar Terra. That was popping up towards the end of the World Championship because the Terra Stellar Close Combat just does a ton of damage. Oftentimes you're not going for multiple Surging Strikes, and if you have, if you go for multiple Terra Water Surging Strikes, you've probably already won the game anyways. So Terra Stellar just gives you a little bit better margin into things that would otherwise deal well with Surging Strikes but can't really take a boosted up Terra Stellar Close Combat. Rillaboom's interesting. I do want to remind everyone that some people do run max speed Incineroar in this format, so 123 speed outspeeding Incineroar by 1 point can be an important Pokemon, or it can be an important speed stat on something like Rillaboom. So yeah, this is going to be a spread that I reuse a lot, just outspeed Rillaboom or outspeed max speed Incineroar so that you can actually go for Fake Out first. You'll be able to verify their speed stat. Well, they'll know you're faster because your Grassy Surge will activate before their Intimidate. But yeah, just important to always make sure that your Rillaboom is a little bit faster unless you're completely okay with going second. to their Incineroar, which is, can be fine for some teams. Outside of that, just maxing out HP and bulk in the special defense stat to get the most value out of Assault Vest, and then a bit of attack investment to make sure that your Wood Hammers and Grassy Glides are doing the trick against neutral targets like Calyrex Shadow Rider, taking the knockout with a combination of the two, and then also just being able to deal with an Urshifu after it's taken a bit of chip damage. Because I don't think Grassy Glide, unless you have significant investment and maybe a Miracle Seed, can knock out the Urshifu in one. So yeah, this is the first place Spear Pillar team. A very similar team got second at the Spear Pillar Tour. It also got 2 times top 8s in the Victory Road Tour, piloted by Marco Fierro and Sanvia. Definitely a very strong team. Dominated the grassroots tours this weekend. We have that same Rocky Helmet Incineroar, which was on many teams at the World Championship. So definitely there's a potential hole in the metagame for Spore and Amoonguss to abuse this, but the general strength against Urshifu is just super high value on the Incineroar. So oftentimes you're going to take that, especially on a team like this with Follow Me that is immune to Spore from Amoonguss, and then Rillaboom as well can ignore it. And then yeah, the Calyrex on this team is Spell Tag, which I believe was innovated by Montana Mott to get first place at maybe Los Angeles Regionals. But the value of this set, the Spell Tag in particular, is that after a nasty plot, you want to KO all but specialty defensive Amoonguss, and that's really important in the matchup against Calyrex Ice Rider, because a lot of their matchup is actually just pinning you down with the Amoonguss and getting favorable sleep turn. So basically with the Spell Tag, you're driving to get the Calyrex 2/2 and then just go for an Astral Barrage and take a knockout. They kind of have to really dance around your fake out pressure on this set, because if you get out of Trick Room and you have the +2 on the nasty plot, nasty or Astral Barrage at +2 plus a double up into Calyrex with anything on the team will actually knock it out if they've gone for the Terastallization. So that's a cool combo, and generally just the strength of this set. We're also seeing a lot more Psychic, less of the Terra Fairy Draining Kiss that prioritize just surviving longer and just trying to take more damage faster with the Calyrex. And then outside that, it's a pretty standard team. The Ogerpon is running Ivy Cudgel, Grassy Glide. You can combo the Terra Fire plus the Rillaboom's Grassy Surge. You get the +1 from the Heart Flame Mask activation. I forget the name at this point, it's been a while, but yeah, you get the +1 plus the Grassy Terrain on the Grassy Glide to knock out Urshifu in one hit. That can be really important because Choice Scarf Urshifu is oftentimes one of the answers to Calyrex Shadow Rider, so having the option to follow me that away with the Ogerpon, if you don't have Terra available, is very nice, and if you do, you can just knock it out in one hit with the Terastallization Grassy Glide. Rillaboom running that same set, not a lot to speak on here. Terra Fire is a strong Terastallization in the face of Calyrex Ice Rider, as well as Koraidon, which, just resisting those otherwise one-hit knockout signature moves from the two. I guess Flare Blitz isn't a signature move, but you know what I mean, just its strongest offensive attacking move. Again, we have the Raging Bolt. Looks like I didn't go 12 speed on this one. Really, again, you're just trying to prioritize bulk and then maybe a bit of speed creep to Draco Meteor opposing Raging Bolts, but you have the Terra Fairy to defensively Terra in front of their Dracos if you think that is a concern. Once again, we do have that Urshifu with the Stellar Terra. Not going to comment on it again, but yeah, those are the top 2 teams from the Spear Pillar, basically 2 variations of Calyrex Shadow Rider, but you do see how the Follow Me support and the Calyrex Shadow Rider moveset can definitely deviate in how the team plays a fair bit. In third place, we have this Urshifu, we have a Ogerpon, Regidrago, and Zacian. Those are definitely the Pokemon that are more recognizable here. It seems based on Grant Weldon's top 32 at Worlds team, I want to say. I think he ended up cutting, but losing in the top 32, definitely an impressive finish, one of the top finishing, if not the top finishing Zacians at Worlds. So I think he had some variation. There was maybe an Amoonguss Follow Me user instead of the Ogerpon. This is a much more offensive variation of an already offensive team composition. We have the Tornadus to allow the Zacian to move first. It is extremely fast, but not as fast as the Calyrex's or Calyrex Shadow Rider by just a hair, like 2 base points. So that's annoying, but you have Tailwind to offset that. You'll outspeed the bulkier ones that were kind of prominent at Worlds, which is cool. You have Terra Ground to basically completely counter Miraidon. You have Terra Ground, Terra Blast to knock it out if it's an electric one. If they've gone for Terra Fairy, you can kind of bait that out with Protect. And then go for, you do have the Behemoth Blade. It says Iron Head on Pokemon Showdown, but it does automatically transform to Behemoth Blade in-game. So yeah, you really deal with opposing Miraidon extremely well. And then Sacred Sword is strong into Incineroar if you haven't gone for the Terra Ground. because oftentimes you do want to save it for the Regidrago. You get Tailwind up, you go for Regidrago, Terra Ghost, and then nothing can fake out Cycle on you and stop you from going for those Dragon Energies and dealing insane damage with the Dragon's Maw, plus Life Orb and Stab, and the insane base power of 150 on the spread move. You can also go for Draco Meteor in a pinch because there is a lot of wide guard in the metagame, so that's definitely very important. And then Terra Ghost, Terra Blast, a strong option against opposing Calyrex. I do want to highlight the Ogre Pawn as an interesting fake follow me user instead of the Amoonguss. So Ogre Pawn with Defiant is really a great deterrent against Incineroar, which can be really annoying for the Zacian. You also have a Farigiraf to stop any fake out, so also Terra Ghost, and just a potential Terra Ground, Terra Blast knockout on the Incineroar, as well as Surging Strikes Urshifu. So while traditionally you would think Incineroar would be very strong against a Zacian team, against this one it's kind of a liability, which really lets Zacian kind of do what it wants. So moving back out, we have the other top 4 team. This is the, also the world's finalist team. Utah, I think, what is it, BZ Trick Room or something like that? I don't remember their username actually. But overall, a strong team. Basically, you have a standard-ish rain composition. We have Life Orb Pelipper instead of the Focus Sash. Terra Grass, Trick Room Calyrex to avoid Amoonguss. With the Terra Grass, you don't have to worry about being spored. Urshifu with Focus Sash instead of Choice Scarf, because the Choice Scarf is actually on the Landorus. So definitely a more rain-focused take on the team. You have Helping Hand to boost up the Sansir Storms or the Surging Strikes, as well as any damage from the Calyrex Ice Rider in Trick Room. But giving the Life Orb to the Pelipper really does make the Trick Room mode very potent as well. No speed investment on the Pelipper, just max bulk. So you're able to take hits maybe a little bit better than people are used to it doing, and then able to go for extremely strong Weather Balls and Hurricanes in Trick Room. Just a strong team overall. You have Amoonguss with Clear Smog, which is notable because Don Dozo was popping up at the World Championship. There were 2 in the top 16, I want to say. Maybe 2 in the top 8. So having Clear Smog baked into the team is definitely very much appreciated. Iron Valiant is kind of your jack of all trades mon. You have Coaching to boost up the Urshifu and the Calyrex Ice Rider. Encore, things want to try and fake out cycle you. Wide guard in the face of opposing Calyrex Shadow Rider, which puts them in kind of a weird spot because you can go for Booster Energy, sped up Spirit Break into the Calyrex if they try and set up Nasty Plot on your wide guard, or go for a Psychic or something, and then they are a lot weaker, chip down significantly, as well as basically just having not gotten the full value of their turn. And if they do call you going for Spirit Break, and you went for wide guard, they completely wasted your turn, and you might have even gotten a Spore off, a Trick Room, or maybe a Surging Strikes into their Calyrex. So a lot of cool mix-ups you can do with the Iron Valiant. Definitely a 50-50 machine. So no surprise seeing this team get second at Worlds and then convert strong in the grassroots circuit. The metagame definitely hasn't progressed too much. We'll see how it does at San Antonio, or rather how the metagame progresses in general, but definitely a strong team. The leading Calyrex team, Calyrex Ice Rider team, coming out of this weekend and from Worlds in general. We also saw Michael Derbesti's Zamazenta team do extraordinarily well in the Spear Pillar Tour. We saw it actually get 2 top 8 slots in the Spear Pillar Tour. Very similar. I didn't check exactly. It's definitely the same 6. I don't know if there were some Terra deviations, but this is taken from YEF3, which is actually one of my locals. Definitely hoping to see him do well with this or another team at San Antonio. But yeah, basically the Zamazenta team, you have the Chen Pao Sword of Ruin to boost up the damage output of Body Press and Heavy Slam on Zamazenta. +1 Body Press is just so much damage. I think the wide guard set seemed to be more dominant at the World Championships. People realizing, okay, wide guard is just way too high value against the other restricteds spread type damage. So even though you can boost up a bit more defensively and offensively with the Iron Defense Body Press set, it's just not as valuable as being able to completely stuff your opponent's main offensive option in Glacial Lance, Astral Barrage, Origin Pulse, Water Spout, Precipice Blades, Terra Starstorm after you've gone for the Terra. So yeah, definitely a strong team from Michael. He went Safety Goggles Urshifu, which we hadn't seen at all this format with Substitute. So a lot of interesting choices. There's definitely a very targeted application here. I'd imagine this is very strong into opposing Calyrex Ice Rider teams, which with the addition of the wide guard, Zamazenta is definitely even stronger. Entei is definitely a standout pick. It's a choice band set here. I don't know what EV spreads you should run here. You could run Adamant, and then outspeed Adamant Urshifu and be able to go for Sacred Fire first and then potentially get a burn on them. But I like Jolly just because there was some Jolly Urshifu picking up at the World Championship as far as I'm aware. but you do definitely lose out on some damage on the Sacred Fire, Flare Blitz, Extreme Speed, and Stone Edge. Terra Normal Extreme Speed, definitely good at cleaning up games. Zamazenta is an excellent damage trader. If it's not going to take knockouts, it's definitely going to put things low enough that they're in E-Speed range. This team's also very anti-intimidate, which is cool for Chien-Pao and Rillaboom, which would otherwise not love playing against Incineroar. You have the Body Press to completely ignore Intimidate on the Zamazenta, Surging Strikes, crits through Intimidate, and then Inner Focus on Entei, a strong option as well. And then we have a bulky Flutter Mane set with Terra Grass to ignore Amoonguss, as well as be resistant to Rillaboom, which can otherwise be kind of a strong check to Flutter Mane. If you're not like a choice set, you can't do a whole lot of damage to the Assault Vest set, and they can just knock you out with Wood Hammer. You do have the option to go for a Terra Grass to stop that. You can also ignore Follow Me from Amoonguss, which could be important, but overall, kind of interesting. Moonblast Shadow Ball, usually we'll see Taunt or Thunder Wave over Shadow Ball, but Michael prioritizing just forcing a Terrestrialization out of the Calyrex Shadow Riders, which makes sense given that a lot of them were Terra Dark coming into this tournament, so you could force the Terra and then go for a Moonblast on the follow-up. Icy Wind's also very strong in this set. We're running quite a fast Zamazenta to be able to outspeed Ogerpon, but after an Icy Wind, you'll outspeed everything in the format shy of Reggie. No, you might actually outspeed Regieleki because, 277 down. Yeah, that'd be below 180, I think. So yeah, the Zamazenta speed lets you outspeed everything in the metagame after an Icy Wind, which is pretty cool. Definitely important. Just contributing to Zamazenta's ability to be an excellent damage trader. Also, the Urshifu at max speed is able to outspeed a Calyrex Shadow Rider. Surging Strike 8, also get Zacian similarly, so lots of great synergy there. So yeah, as mentioned, this team got 2 top 8s at the Spear Pillar Tour and then top 4 for Michael at Worlds. So I think it's a team with a lot of strong matchups. It's definitely very well built. It's not really going to overwhelm you with like anything too quickly, but it's just a team that damage trades excellently over time and just slowly chokes you out over the course of a game. The plan for this video is basically just covering top 8 just because I'm going in such detail, but this is a cool team from Worlds, basically a hyper-offensive rain team with Kyogre, with Basculegion, with Life Orb. Last Respects, we saw a lot of that this last format, but it was definitely a novel choice in this format with Terra Grass. You're ignoring Amoonguss. You can do a ton of damage to Calyrex Shadow Rider, Calyrex Ice Rider, Calyrex Shadow Rider, so any team relying on Amoonguss is really going to struggle against all the Terra Grass on this team. Again, a Terra Grass Urshifu, Terra Grass Assault Vest Kyogre. You have Serena as an interesting priority blocker with Queenly Majesty. You can also taunt away Trick Room setups that would otherwise be strong against your faster paced team. Triple Axle with Wide Lens doing a lot to Rillaboom. I think with Terra Ice should knock out, and if not, you're doing a lot of damage anyways. Power Whip's accuracy is also increased by the Wide Lens, so you don't have to be as nervous when you're clicking it, but overall you're here to basically just switch in when you have a Rillaboom on the field threatening your Pokemon, your water type sweepers with a Grassy Glide, and then cleaning it up with a Triple Axle afterwards. Tornadus is a covert cloak set, running a fair bit of bulk, some speed to be able to outspeed Landorus Incarnate form. I don't know how important that is. You could definitely just outspeed a basically max speed Urshifu, which would be 164 speed. I think you'd only be able to hit, I guess you wouldn't have to run Timid, but yeah, this gets up to 165 on the bump point. So yeah, outside of that, we have a Chien-Pao to boost up the damage output of the Urshifu and the Basculegion even further, as well as the Serena, I guess, but yeah, you also have Icy Wind. If you don't want to set up Trick Room, you can go for Icy Wind plus the Urshifu Choice Band. Surging Strike to take some pretty crazy KOs. I think, yeah, you obviously don't outspeed Calyrex Shadow Rider unless you figure that out in the first game that they are running a non-max speed one, then you can outspeed it and go for an Icy Wind to knock it out in follow-up with the Urshifu Surging Strike. So overall, very cool team. That's going to do it for the Spear Pillar teams, and we'll move on to the Victory Road Tour teams, which felt definitely a lot more reminiscent of the World Championship. This first place team is not something we saw at the World Championship. It's a Terapagos Choice Specs team, which was strong early format, but ultimately didn't win any tournaments that year, I want to say, at least in the West. But basically, we're running a Choice Specs Terapagos prioritizing offense. If you don't remember, Terrastellar Hyper Beam is able to knock out a Calyrex Ice Rider in one hit. So that's a cool option to just say, hey, I really need to take a knockout this turn. Dark Pulse strong against the other Calyrexes. I guess you could use against for Rigorath as well. Earth Power strong into Incineroar, but generally you're just going to be locking Terra Starstorm in most circumstances, so don't need to worry about that too much. Rigorath is your priority blocker here. It's also strong into opposing Calyrex Ice Rider teams, which could overwhelm you with damage. Outside of the Urshifu, nothing loves taking Glacial Lance on this team. Obviously not Whimsicott, Landorus, and Ogerpon Heartflame, even though we are running a bit bulkier of a Heartflame here, but still running max speed, or close to max speed, to take advantage of Tailwind. Outside of that, it is a pretty straightforward team. It's just trying to take advantage of the strong offensive synergy. Overall, you have the water type coverage and the grass and the fire coverage from the Ogerpon, so you've kind of made a you literally do have a fire, water, grass offensive core. And we do have the Whimsicott here, which is running a Tailwind set. Covert Cloak to be able to dodge Fake Out, definitely important. Terra Water, a strong defensive type against something like a Calyrex Ice Rider. If they try and set up Trick Room on you, you can go for Encore into that, which is cool. Oftentimes they'll go for Glacial Lance with the knowledge of that, and so having the Terra Water to counter that is a good mix-up. Light Screen's cool just because this team doesn't have any natural damage mitigation, so having the option to boost up your special defense against a Calyrex, Shadow Rider, Kyogre, or any of the other special attacking restricteds can be appreciated. So yeah, a pretty big win for Terapagos early in the season. We'll see how it converts at San Antonio Regionals. Second place was the team that got top 8, I want to say, at the World Championships. A Dondozo team with a pretty standard Dondozo set, Terra Grass, Order Up, Wave Crash, Earthquake, and then we have Assault Vest. Miraidon is definitely the standout set here. I think this team actually only has 2 protects, the Dondozo and the Chi-Yu. Outside of that, it is a Choice Scarf. Tatsugiri running Terra Normal to maybe beat out a Calyrex Shadow Rider in the endgame, or at least kind of force a 50-50, where you don't outspeed, unfortunately, most Calyrex Shadow Rider if they're running max speed. You can outspeed it just physically with Tatsugiri's stats, so in those circumstances, you can maybe figure out if they're going to go for a Psychic or a Astral Barrage, and then kind of bluff whether you're going to go for Terra Normal or not. I'm not entirely sure. I don't follow the Terra Normal on this set entirely, but it is there. We have a Terra Ghost Chi-Yu to dodge Fake Out and just go for strong Overheat, Star Pulses, and Heat Waves. Dragonite is multi-scale Choice Band, so kind of calling that Incineroar isn't going to be that good at this tournament, or rather, or even that they might not bring it against your team because of the strength of Dondozo. It's not that good in the Miraidon, although with the Assault Vest it can Fake It Out pretty freely without any priority blocking. And then this Choice Specs Goldengo set, which is kind of strong. It's got a weird EV training, so it has a lot of bulk, speed, and then just a little bit of special attack, but maybe you do just get there with the Choice Specs Terra Steel. Honestly, that is hitting pretty hard. The way I kind of envision this team is you're really just trying to trade early with the Miraidon, get everything in very low to where you can go for Earthquakes with the Dondozo, or just knock things out with Spread, Make It Rain from Goldengo, or Extreme Speed from Dragonite. So overall, it's a pretty cool team. Definitely a very chippy Dondozo team. Usually they're kind of trying to do something cheesy, just get an early KO with Tailwind plus Goldengo or something like that. But this one, it definitely seems to be playing it pretty straight, just trying to take trades here and there and then clean up after you've used all your resources on the Miraidon to sweep with the Dondozo, or vice versa after you've used your resources to beat the Dondozo. Oh, you can clean up with the Miraidon and the Dragonite, or even the Goldengo. Next up, we have the team that got top 8 at Worlds. I think this was the top finishing Terapagos team. Got top 4 in the Victory Road Tour. I believe that is, Francisco Piopero Sisiat, who came off of a second place at the Stuttgart Regionals, I want to say. So definitely in high form right now for him. But yeah, basically this is a interesting Terapagos set. I think we started seeing this set pop up a little bit at US Nationals or US Internats. The Calm Mind Substitute set. Before then it was usually Calm Mind Earth Power, but since you don't click Earth Power that option, Substitute can really get you a lot of value against Amoonguss in particular, where you get a Substitute in. Basically you get Fake Out pressure on the board, you get a Substitute, or just do it in front of the Amoonguss no matter what. And then for the training of the Terapagos, I'm running it faster. The speed stat obviously jumps up when the Terapagos is in its actual battle ready form. I have it outspeeding the max speed Incineroar that I've mentioned so many times this video. Outside of that, running a jump point and special attack, and then getting a basically a leftovers point when you're both in the battle ready form and the terastallized form. That can be really important because with leftovers and the leftovers plus the terrain, you're healing 12.5% HP per turn. So if you go for Substitute and then a Protect, you're back up at full with the Terra Shell active in the battle ready form. That's really cool. Means it's going to be even harder to break your Substitute. So I do think this is a very annoying set for a lot of teams to play against, especially special attacking teams. Like I could imagine Kyogre being kind of hard against this team. Honestly, slower paced Calyrex Ice Rider teams might struggle to break this as well. So cool, innovative set there. Again, we have the Rocky Helmet Incineroar just tanking those Surging Strikes, which can be annoying for these teams. Urshifu is kind of the bane of these type of teams, so having Rillaboom to deal with that, and also basically the Incineroar can switch in, take a Rocky Helmet. Rather, the Urshifu has to take all that Rocky Helmet chip, and then suddenly it's in Grassy Glide chip for the rest of the game. Or it's in Grassy Glide range for the rest of the game, so that's a cool aspect of the team. The Urshifu is running a Splash Plate just because the Chien-Pao is the Focus Sash set, but yeah, just trying to take advantage of the Sword of Ruin. Functions as an alternative sweeper as opposed to the Terapagos. It's a little bit more proactive. You're active as soon as it's on the field instead of Terapagos, which kind of needs a couple turns to ramp up. The Chien-Pao with the Sword of Ruin and the Terra Water Unseen Fist Splash Plate. Surging Strikes can be really hard to deal with for some teams. Last up is the Flutter Mane with Icy Wind and Thunder Wave, definitely full-on support. The Thunder Wave, really essential against opposing Calyrex Shadow Rider for Urshifu, as well as Chien-Pao, and just generally kind of can be a nuisance for opposing teams. I think Thunder Wave is probably pretty important in dealing with opposing Zamazentas. Those battles tend to go a long time anyway, so the more Pokemon you can Thunder Wave, particularly the Zamazenta, that can be extremely valuable in basically over time getting the RNG edge over those teams. That is one of the top 4 teams. The other one, Luca Paz, one of the top Koraidon players at Worlds. I'm not sure if it was him. I think him and Carlos Cabal both went 8-3, I want to say, just outside of the top cut. So this is a team that I was highlighting before the World Championship. I think it's quite strong. The strongest Koraidon composition. Basically, you're running the standard set. Flame Charge to boost up and not basically knock yourself out when you're hitting into something weak like a Namungus or a Flutter Mane. You can just knock that out with Flame Charge, not take all that recoil, and get a speed boost to boot to be able to deal with opposing Calyrex Shadow Rider. Incineroar is a pretty standard set. We're running Will-O-Wisp instead of Flare Blitz or Taunt, just because we can already run the Taunt on the Flutter Mane. Flutter Mane's a cool set here, so most Booster Energy or Photosynthesis active Flutter Mane, I guess I could say, have to run Booster Energy to achieve that. Because you have the Sun active on the Koraidon, you can run Focus Sash here, which means you can just max out your special attack, deal a ton of damage with Terra Fairy Moonblast in late games, as well as be able to go for Icy Wind Pressure with your Koraidon if you want to, as well as the Ogerpon. It also appreciates it. But yeah, definitely a very cool set. We're running a pretty quick Raging Bolt here to be able to outspeed, I want to say, maybe Ogerpon after an Icy Wind. I'm not sure. Maybe you run 120 speed. I might have messed that speed up. But yeah, outside of that, we have a pretty cool Raging Bolt. We have Volt Switch instead of Electro Web, which is pretty common. We already have speed control on the Flutter Mane, so that's cool. And then Weather Ball, which can be really annoying for opposing Calyrex Ice Rider because they kind of have to Terra in front of your Raging Bolt to be able to take that especially well. And then also strong, I guess it's not that useful against rain teams outside of the ability to go for Terra Water, or not Terra Water, but Rain boosted Weather Ball into opposing Incineroar for a knockout. That's pretty cool. So overall, you know what? Honestly, you might just say, all right, I'm going to take full advantage and outspeed opposing Incineroar. The HP investment at that point isn't that important. So yeah, you could do that there. But last up, or second to last, is the Ogerpon, the kind of last standard Pokemon in the team. Having a Follow Me Pokemon that can stick around against Calyrex Ice Rider teams. You have the Sturdy to tank 1 Glacial Lance. You can also do a ton of damage before Trick Room goes up. Against Terra Fire, Calyrex Ice Rider, you can maybe get close to a KO with the Terra Rock Ivy Cudgel, whether it goes for Terra or not. So that's a cool option. And then, yeah, we have the last Pokemon on the team, which is the Ditto. Choice Scarf Ditto, very strong against opposing Calyrex Shadow Rider, which was very common at this event. You can also use it as functionally a late game sweeper, late game Urshifu. You can take a lot of Pokemon with the Ditto and it just be really annoying. You're basically using it as a second restricted Pokemon. I do think, I'm not entirely sure, I think there might have been some safety goggles got Ditto. I don't remember which one Luca was running, but I think there was some experimentation with other items on Ditto before and during the World Championship. I think Focus Sash, Safety Goggles, Quick Claw even were some items, but Choice Scarf, definitely an item that is consistently going to get you value in being able to defeat Calyrex Shadow Rider late game. You have Terra Normal to even be able to not have to worry about their Astral Barrages, so overall a very cool pick there. Now we have the last team in the Victory Road top 8, just because a lot of the, as I mentioned before, there was a lot of this specific composition, the Calyrex Shadow Rider with the Terrifier Ogerpon from the Italian players. There's one team that was slightly different, but again, we have a Whimsicott over a Rillaboom, so not much different, but definitely plays very different with the option of a Tailwind mode. Last up in top 8, we had I believe this was Nikki, the South Korean player who got top 4 or top 8 at Worlds with a very similar team. Basically, I've just taken the EV spreads more or less from Luca Cherabelli's championship team, but outside of that, it is very much the same team. We have a bit of deviation. We have, I think that's Wild Charge over Heavy Slam on Luca's team, as well as Terra Bug over Terra Grass. Outside of that, it's the same. This is a Terra Dark Urshifu, actually. Luca did run Terra Water, so outside of that, very similar. Basically, just a very strong team. You have the overwhelming Whimsicott Miraidon team that the team is built around, with Urshifu and Hearthflame Ogerpon being strong offensive options, as well as a good support with the Follow Me. It's kind of a bulkier Ogerpon, so you can take hits a lot better than your opponents might expect. Then Iron Hands combos quite well with Quark Drive and the Electric Terrain, dealing a ton of damage. A low kick is so strong into all the heavy restricted Pokemon. You're basically able to hit a Calyrex Ice Rider with a close combat every turn with no defensive drawback. Drain Punch healing a ton of damage when you have those, the Adamant near max attack plus the Quark Drive boost. You're healing a ton, just it's a nuisance to take out. Then Heavy Slam does a lot of damage to Amoonguss, so maybe prioritizing on this team dealing with Amoonguss, whereas Luca went for the Wild Charge, I want to say, to deal a bit more neutral damage to everything on the field. Last up, I didn't mention this, but the Electric Seed for Farigiraf, definitely key to the team's Calyrex Ice Rider matchup, which would otherwise kind of run you over in Trick Room. So having the Electric Seed be able to tank several Glacial Lances and either go for Trick Room to reverse Trick Room, or even just go for Helping Hand Low Kick to nearly knock out a Calyrex in one hit is definitely very cool. Foul Play, obviously no slouch in damage, and the Psychic dealing a ton of damage to Amoonguss. And Amoonguss can't do a whole lot of damage to you, or a lot of status to you, just because of the Electric Terrain being active, meaning they can't spore any of your Pokemon. So yeah, that's going to be my team dump for this weekend of grassroots tournaments. Hopefully that is useful for y'all's preparations for online tours, regionals, and other events. Hope you guys enjoy these sort of videos. If you enjoy the analysis and the resource provided by the teams, please subscribe to the channel. If I didn't mention it already, all these teams will be in the description below, so check that out. And yeah, if you guys enjoy, hope you guys have a happy holidays. And with all that being said, peace, y'all.